Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Ebony Janice. I go by Ebony Janice, which means that you should call me Ebony Janice. And Wednesdays I talk about love. Why did I do this to myself? Wednesdays I talk about love and sovereignty. The reason why I say why did I do this to myself is because I'm looking at the notes for this episode and I just decided to tell my business in this series, I guess. Anyways, I have been in love with the same man for almost 26 years. There have been many beautiful relationships between meeting him when I was 17 years old and us having this huge separation and returning to each other very recently. And whew, the thing that I came to talk about is not to tell my business in that regard. Although looking at these notes, I think I do tell more of my business at some point. But the thing that I came to say is that Black women don't have access to longing. And I'll write about this in my forthcoming book, Real Soft Girl Shit, A Womanist Reclamation of Radical Vulnerability. It is actually, in fact, it was a chapter that didn't exist before the return of this particular partnership, relationship. And it was really transformative for me to realize that I had held a lot of shame over the years of always thinking about him. I met him when I was 17. We ended up not going, he was at Morehouse. I was a senior in high school. I ended up not going to school in Atlanta. So the connection that we thought would be able to last, it just wasn't possible. I was from wherever the heck I'm from, Sandusky, Ohio. And it just wasn't possible that our relationship could survive not being in the same place. Anyways, time passed. We reconnected very briefly at one point after, and then more time. Then 20 years passed and we reconnected after those 20 years. And that to say, and there was a reason why the brief connection was as brief as it was, but years passed and this reconnection, it just was more possible for us to actually be in more serious conversation with each other around returning to each other in some form. All that to say, I talked about him for years. I never stopped talking about him. If you know me personally, you've heard his name because I would just randomly bring him up. This is a boy. I'm going to say a boy. This is a boy that I met when he was 18 years old. And I never stopped talking about him. And what I realized after all this time is that I have a practice of longing and yearning, but I do not give myself permission to be longing and yearning. And I realized this the more that I kind of walked through this unfolding of what was happening in this relationship, that I have always judged myself for longing and yearning, that I have always. And then I realized the more that I flesh this out and the more that I have more conversations with my girlfriends, that also I have a whole bunch of girlfriends who feel guilt and shame around longing and yearning. And this is a natural response. Sometimes you long, sometimes you yearn. And if all the Black girls are not longing and yearning, then there is something that is not being healed, something that's not being transmuted, something that's not being created, something that's not being revealed, because we're not out here longing and yearning. Anyways, I think the notes say I'm supposed to say way more of my business in this, but I'm going to stop there because I just think that's a good introduction to this kind of love and sovereignty conversation, that it is not possible for me to talk about sovereignty, which is more of the work that I'm leaning into and leading towards. As a matter of fact, I have a 12-month cohort that I do just once a year, or that I only do with 2 to 3 women a year. And it's called A Return to God. And it really is around sovereignty. But that to say, I honestly feel like this is a good introduction to this, that I cannot talk about sovereignty without talking about love, and that I cannot talk about love without talking about what happens when you stop longing and when you stop yearning. Tell me in the comment section how you feel about the idea of missing somebody for 25 years. Whatever.